Hey guys, Dan here. Welcome to Dan Reviews It. This is a movie review. We don't do a ton of these anymore on the channel, just because for the most part I don't really get out to see current movies like right away. I used to work at a movie theater that I was able to do that. The theater I work at now is the second run, so we get them, about a month and a half late. I did see Endgame last weekend, but so did literally, the whole world. So there's so many reviews of Endgame up, I'm not even going to touch that. But I did like it a lot, if you're wondering. But I figured, one easy thing to do is to catch some of these Netflix movies, and there's several coming out this year that I've been interested in. I wanted to actually see The Dirt, the Motley Crue movie, right away when that came out, but I didn't get to really do that in time, so... but this Ted Bundy movie came out today, and I found myself with nothing to do tonight, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to watch this and do a review for you guys on my channel. The movie itself is called Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. And I originally thought when I heard, Zac Efron was doing Ted Bundy, that's the whole hook for the movie, basically. I had assumed it was going to theaters, I thought it was, and then when it premiered at Sundance, it was snatched up by Netflix for $9 million. So they said, no, we're going to run it on our platform. And I believe they are going to put it in some theaters. I don't know if that's right now or later in the year, closer towards Oscar season, because they do have to have some sort of theatrical run to be considered for Oscars. Boy, let's dive into it. So, I guess let's talk about the director first. His name is Joe Berlinger, and he is known mostly for documentaries, which I have seen 2 of his documentaries, but he's done a whole handful. He has also done scripted fiction as well. He did the second Blair Witch film, which I did not see, but by all accounts is not good. I love the first Blair Witch, but he didn't have anything to do with that. So he did the Book of Shadows. So the 2 I've seen, though, is the Paradise Lost films. There's 3 of them. I saw the most recent one. That's about the West Memphis 3, and that is a project that has been near and dear to his heart. He's been, really tracking that for a long time. So that's kind of, one of his pet projects. But he also directed the Metallica documentary, Some Kind of Monster, which, for my money, is one of the great music documentaries of all time. What's so cool about it is it's not really about, them on tour or them making a record even, although there is some of that in there, but it's mostly about the band going into therapy and their interactions that way. So I thought that was an interesting subject to tackle for a rock doc, and I thought, it worked very well. Love that movie. And if you know anything else about the casting of this movie, maybe you've heard James Hetfield has a minor role as a police officer, and obviously, the Metallica connection from that. But he does a great job, in his scene. He's really the first arresting officer of Ted Bundy. It's all on a traffic violation of all things. But yeah, he does a good job. Berlinger is mostly known for the documentary stuff, and this is sort of in his wheelhouse in that it is, like a real crime kind of thing, true crime. And he also did another Bundy thing earlier in the year. Here it is, the Conversations with the Killer, the Ted Bundy tapes. Now, I didn't watch that, but that was also on Netflix, premiered, I believe, in January. So he's definitely got his hands all over the Ted Bundy stuff. And this is based on a book written by Elizabeth Kendall, who was played here in the film by Lily Collins. It's Bundy's girlfriend. And her book was called The Phantom Prince, My Life with Ted Bundy. So some of it is from her perspective, but also a lot of things are taken directly from, court transcriptions or press conferences or what have you. And Berlinger shows that at the end during the opening, or during the first part of the credits. He sort of shows scenes that he's put in his movie, very faithful recreations, I might add. He shows us at the end of the movie, how those looked with the real Ted Bundy and the real judge and all of that. John Malkovich, speaking of which, plays the judge here of the main case. There's a couple judges in the film, but he's the main one. And then, I mentioned Lily Collins here. Dylan Baker's in the movie as well. Jim Parsons as well from Big Bang Theory. He plays excuse me, he plays the attorney, trying to convict Bundy, and Haley Joel Osment is in it as well. Sort of doesn't really show up to the end though, as one of, I guess, one of Liz's family members. So she sort of fades away halfway through the movie. We don't really, she sort of moves away from Ted because it's just too hard for her. She's trying to move on with her life, of what she feels she knows, and of course what we as the audience, I think, already kind of know, going into the film. I mean, Bundy was not only convicted, but shortly before he was murdered on death row, he did confess to a whole dozens of murders. So I think we all know going into the movie, okay, the dude did it, but let's see how it unravels, I guess. And so Zac Efron really does a great job. I mean, he's obviously, I just heard an interview with him about this film saying, I didn't want to just do something to distance myself from Troy Bolton, or whatever his name is. I've never seen High School Musical, but whatever his High School Musical character is. I think it's Troy Bolton. But he was like, I was much more attracted to the script of this than anything else. And, look, obviously the guy's been branching out for years, doing, everything from R-rated comedies like Baywatch or That Awkward Moment, to, more indie films. We Are Your Friends would be an example of that. And then, also those sticking to his family-friendly singing and dancing roots, The Greatest Showman, Hairspray. So, he really is becoming, though, a jack-of-all-trades type of actor. And I think he is great in this movie. I've been a fan of his for a while, really since Hairspray. Like I said, I never watched High School Musical, so I didn't, follow that whole thing. But I knew of him, and when I saw he was going to be in Hairspray, I was like, okay, like, we'll see. But he's great in Hairspray, and that was kind of like, okay, I'm going to give this guy a chance. A lot of these Disney performers are great actors, so, it's not like I was surprised. But, some of them are also kind of hammy and whatever, so it doesn't always work out that way. But as I followed his career through the years, not all of his movies have hit for me. Like the Dirty Grandpa, I thought was terrible. I didn't really get into Baywatch. I didn't really get into That Awkward Moment. So for me, it's like his comedies, and I think he's funny. I think he's a funny dude, but the movies he picks, maybe, the comedies I'm not so into that he does. But I like him, and his charisma, and obviously, the musicals he really shines in. But I think he's got a knack for drama as well. He is more handsome than the real Ted Bundy. When they showed the clips of the real Bundy at the end, maybe not so much. But the whole hook to Bundy is that, he attracted these women because he was a good-looking dude. Is anybody as good-looking as Zac Efron? I don't know. That's, maybe a little bit of a toss-up. But I think he plays this role great. The thing that Ted Bundy had was charisma. This is what drew the ladies to him, that allowed him to, murder them. And so you needed a lead actor with that kind of charisma, and I think Zac Efron definitely has it, and he showcases it here very well. I do think that it's sort of a balancing act, because we all know Ted did it. Of course, Ted knows he did it, but this character has to be sort of ambivalent in that regard, that, like, he doesn't want anybody to know that he did it. And like I mentioned, he only confessed, several days before he was murdered. So, we have to sort of get behind, not necessarily get behind him, because we know he's guilty right from the start of the movie. If you don't, I guess you may get something different out of the film. But it's such a famous case of, like, this dude did it, that, we all know this, I think, going into the film. So what Efron has to do is sort of balance that, like, okay, dude did it, he did it, I know he did it, but he's got to have charisma. He's got to have this air about him, this suave nature. And I think Efron pulls that off very, very well. Yes, he does. However, I think it bears saying as well that Lily Collins delivers thus far the performance of her career. She is great in this movie. And again, since it's from the book, that her character wrote, I think she's obviously got more insight to it than maybe her character is able to let on as well. Because I think, at first she obviously is behind him and, oh, honey, you never did it. I believe you. And then, she sort of shifts that side of herself. But, I've seen her in a few movies. I saw her in The Mortal Instruments and the Warren Beatty movie, Rules Don't Apply. I've seen her in a couple other things over the years. I haven't seen everything she's done, but just pull up some of her stuff. She was in a 30 Seconds to Mars video. I remember that. Oh, she plays the girl on The Blind Side, the daughter. Yep, I saw that. Mirror, Mirror, she plays Snow White. So yeah, so I've seen her in quite a few things. But her powerful performance here is really, really great. I mean, there's going to be a lot of talk in the next week or two when people are talking about this movie. Zac Efron's amazing. He's so good, masterful. Look, he is. It is a great performance. I can't deny that. But she should not go unnoticed either. Lily Collins is great in this movie. Also, Malkovich, I've seen a lot of movies recently with him where he just kind of phones it in. He's doing the Malkovich thing. I think he's really good here too, so I think everybody gives good performances, if not great performances, let's say that. And I think the direction from Berlinger is pretty good. I think it does draw you into the story. I think it really does give a sense of urgency for different characters, be it, lawyers or Bundy himself or Liz. So I think there's a few different things that we get from the direction of the movie. The one scene that particularly sticks out to me in that regard is, he is calling Liz and, is really excited to say, like, hey, like, I figured out, something for the case, like, da-da-da. And she's at work and she's just like, you know what, I don't have time for this right now, I can't talk to you, whatever. And so, she's definitely trying to move on from this, and trying to have some sort of life that doesn't revolve around, oh my God, like, I was in love with a mass murderer. So, that's one of the things that I think the direction does well in that. Okay, so those are all pretty much the positives, I would say. So the negatives. There's nothing necessarily, other than some good performances, that make this really stand out from a lot of other movies like this, or even like movie of the week, TV kind of things. Like, the acting is great, but it's not that different, I don't think, than certain things you would see on, a lot of these true crime shows, or, even like, I mean, it's definitely higher echelon than like a Law and Order episode for sure, but it's just rather paint by numbers. We never delve into the psyche of Bundy, other than to, from his perspective of like, well, I'm innocent, that kind of thing, and his lies, and like, okay. Which, I mean, it sort of makes sense because it's based on her book, so it's not like she had his psyche. But, I don't know. It would be interesting, I think, to delve a little more into what happened to him and why he's doing this and what is going on in his mind while he's doing it. And we don't see any of the actual crime, the actual murders, until, like, the last scene of the movie. I have mixed feelings about that choice. I think it might be even more paint by numbers if we saw him, murdering a little bit along the way, because we, as the audience, already know. So that I kind of liked, actually. But it is interesting that because of that, we don't get any sort of sense of, you know, why he's doing this, or you know, what he's getting from it, or anything, you know. And I would have liked to see a little more of that, or really any of it. We saw none. So that I definitely would have liked to see a little bit more. Yeah, just again, the whole sort of paint by numbers thing, you know, it's a story that we've seen a lot before. And what elevates it really is the acting, and I think some of the directorial choices. I don't think Berlinger, you know, is slacking off here. I don't think he's asleep at the wheel. I think he made some definitive choices, and I think some worked and some didn't. That's, you know, that's all there is to it. I think it's a little, you know, basic of a story, especially once we get kind of to the courtroom stuff. You know, I think that is a little bit basic, but I think some of his choices, like I said, you know, maybe not showing the murders throughout the movie was a good idea. You know, I liked that he showed the traffic stop at the beginning of the movie and sort of how that came about. I liked, you know, I mean, he escaped from prison twice. You know, we see a good bit of that. So we definitely get the beats of what happened, but maybe I would have liked to dive in a little bit more than that, and maybe, you know, the Bundy tapes is a good companion piece. I chose to sort of do this review without watching that, just so I could review the movie as a standalone entity. But Berlinger, you know, like I said, did those, and you can find those on Netflix as well. I believe it's 4 1-hour installments, so it's sort of like a mini-series, I guess. So it's not a movie, but yeah, it's called the Confessions of, let me see here, get the exact name for you, Conversations with the Killer, the Ted Bundy tapes. So I'm actually going to check that out myself, and, you know, just sort of dive in a little bit deeper. But what's interesting is, you know, there's still conversations with Ted Bundy, so it's like, yeah, we might delve into his psyche a little bit, but it's still going to be some lies, and so that's, you know, maybe that's why Berlinger chose not to focus on that kind of stuff for the film. So, but that's going to do it. I don't want to, you know, talk too much about it. I'd love for you to watch it. The name also is terrible. I hate the name. I can't get behind that. Extremely wicked, shockingly evil, and vile. I don't know. You could have just called it Vile, you know, if you didn't want to call it, like, Bundy or something. But it's a terrible name, so I don't like that. But for everything the movie does well, and certainly for the great performances, you know, I would say Efron, definitely solid. Lily Collins, you know, best performance I've seen her give for sure. And Malkovich back on his game as well after, you know, some recent work where I think he was kind of stumbling through. So I'm going to leave the movie with a B overall. Thought it was pretty good. A bit uneven for sure, but the performances and some of the directing choices definitely elevate it from what it could have been, which is, you know, just pretty paint by numbers, you know, and it is some of that, but I think it definitely deserves a little bit of a higher grade due to some great performances and some interesting directorial choices. So that's going to do it for me. Thanks so much for watching. There's a ton of stuff on the channel. If you do like movies, Merlin and I, my buddy, are doing all of the Disney animated classics. We're going to put Pinocchio up very soon. Snow White is up now. Also, every other Friday or so, we've got Frasier Friday. We're going through the Frasier series, and that's with Merlin as well. I think there's going to be some food reviews coming up as well pretty soon. We did some Snickers flavors not too long ago, but I have the new Lay's flavors for this season, and then also there's some interesting M&M flavors that just came out, so we might get into some more Food Fanatics episodes as well. But that's going to do it for me. Subscribe if you haven't. Join us on Facebook. It's just Dan Reviews It on Facebook, and we'd love to have you aboard. We're almost at 300 subscribers, so I would love to have you subscribe if you have not done so already, and tell a friend. Get them in on the subscription as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.